for my reading interventions, well, the two that I was able to do, I was focusing on rhyming and phoneme substitution, because when I did the 2Ps phonological awareness assessment, I noticed that the students were really struggling in those two specific areas compared to the rest of the class. So I was able to do 2 intervention sessions with the 3 students that I chose, which were Julie and Emma and Summer. And those I did the first one on March 9th and the second one on March 11th. So March 9th, we just focused on the rhyming basics, and then March 11th, I started modeling some examples of some rhymes. And those were the only 2 that I was able to do because I was going to come back after spring break and kind of touch on phoneme substitution. So I'm going to first address the lesson questions. So I felt that this lesson was appropriate for these students because they are ESE students who have a very low reading level as it is. So that's why I chose like a kindergarten, first grade standard to kind of focus on, because it's something that they will understand. So these students, like I said, specifically struggle with rhyming and phoneme substitution, which is why I chose these interventions for them. And modeling was something that they really understand, and like hands-on activities helped them to understand it even more. So question number 2 is different multisensory activities that were used. And actually, I chose to do my lesson on the last intervention when we're doing like a review and the assessments and that kind of thing. So I chose 2 different activities, one for rhyming and one for phoneme substitution. And I learned that the students, like over time from just being in the classroom with them and watching them learn, I have learned that they learn better through like hands-on activities rather than throwing a piece of paper in front of them and saying, read this and do these questions. So for this specific lesson, for my last intervention, for what would have been my last intervention, it was kind of a check for understanding, check to see what you learned type of multisensory activity. And then for formative assessment, I chose to do an exit slip because like thumbs up, thumbs down, that's kind of childish and they are older age. So the exit slip let me know what the students have learned, and it touched on both, again, rhyming and phoneme substitution. So the questions were like, what is a rhyme? Give me 4 examples, and then like questions you still have about rhyming. And then the same type of thing for phoneme substitution, like give me 4 examples of phoneme substitution, any questions you still have, and what is phoneme substitution, or what are phonemes in general. But for the phoneme substitution examples, I wanted them to give me 2 in the beginning and then 2 in the end of when they like changed them. So now I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the lesson that I would have done with them. Like again, like I said, this would have been like the last intervention session, which would be, I would have probably done on April 1st when we do the review, the practice, and the assessment. So like I said, my formative assessment is the exit slip. My summative would be the students completing the 2Ps assessment again for the post-test data to check for understanding. The materials needed for this would be, of course, a pencil, a pen, or pen, a piece of paper for their exit slip, a stress ball for one of the multisensory activities for rhyming, Scrabble pieces for another multisensory activity, and then the 2Ps assessment again for, like I said, the post-test data. So my explanation of content, the students will understand that rhyming words are words that have the same sound at the end of the word. When it comes to phoneme substitution, students will first understand that a phoneme is the smallest unit of sound in a word that makes a difference in its pronunciation as well as its meaning from another word. Students will then understand that phoneme substitution is when you replace or change a phoneme in a word with a different phoneme. For example, like the P in pop distinguishes it from the H in hop, where the pronunciation is different as well as the meaning. So I would explain to the students that those are 2 different words and they mean 2 different things. For my guided practice, this would be reviewing together about rhymes and phonemes. So I would do a little review on the board with them. And then independent would be these multisensory activities. Although we're kind of doing them together, they're doing them independently, if that makes sense, because I'm not telling them the words for the rhyming activity, and I'm not telling them what words they need to make for the phoneme activity. And then the assessment for the post-test. So for my demonstration of content, I would start the lesson off with communicating just in general about what rhymes are and what phonemes are, as well as phoneme substitution. And then I will call on a student who's raising their hand in the class, and they will share out what a rhyme is or what phonemes are. And I would write that on the board because then they can refer back to this if they get confused at any time. From there, we will start off with rhyming. At this point, because it's session 6, the students should have a very good understanding of what rhyming is, so they should be able to easily participate in this sensory lesson. So this lesson will include like sight, touch, and sound because they're using a stress ball. At this age, I don't have to worry about them throwing the stress ball around the classroom, things like that. They're very mature about that kind of stuff. So I will start off with explaining that we are doing this activity together, and I will tell students that I'm going to start off with the stress ball, and I'm going to say a word. So I'm going to pick the word mop. So I'll pass it to the person who's sitting next to me, and I'm saying, okay, you're in control of the stress ball now. You need to come up with a word that rhymes with mop. So they could say like top, and then they pass it on to the next person, and now they're in control of the stress ball, and they need to come up with a word that rhymes with mop and top. So we keep going around in a circle with the 3 students and myself. Actually, I will probably step out of it after the first round and let the students just kind of engage in it and see what they can come up with. And we'll just keep going until they run out of words that rhyme with mop and pop and top and all that kind of stuff. So the last person who has a stress ball, so say it's Summer, she'll pick a new word, and they keep going around in a circle and coming up with rhyming words. I would say I'm going to have them do it 2 to 3 times, like going around with different words, just to check for their understanding. If I feel like they have a good understanding on it, we will move on to the next lesson or activity, which would be on phoneme segmentation or substitution, not segmentation. And during this time, the students will, I will give them a base word on the board. So I'm going to say the word sun. And they're going to have Scrabble pieces. They need to change the beginning of the word sun. So they're going to lay out sun on their desk or table or whatever with the Scrabble pieces. And then they're going to, underneath that, they're going to see how many other words they can make changing the beginning sound. Or the beginning phoneme, I should say. So they can do run. So sun, run, things like that. Anything that they can think of. So then I'm going to be walking around monitoring the students during that time. And then once they're finished with that, they're going to raise their hand. I'm going to come check on them. And then I'm going to tell them, okay, great job. Now I want you to change the end sound of sun. See what else you can come up with. Might be a little bit harder for them. And then I want to see how many they can, how many different words they can create, and then we'll come back together and kind of discuss those words and how the meanings are different and things like that. And I'm going to, again, be monitoring the students' progress. And then I will ask students to raise their hands and share me some examples, like I said. And we'll discuss what if they change the beginning sound or the end sound. So like I said, this would be my last intervention session. So the students should have a very good understanding at this point, as long as I explained my modeling well and we did enough activities and things like that.